What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you the second installment of my manga monthly series. And today I'm going to be talking about Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Oh man. But before I get into that, it was definitely time that I bring this series back. I know a lot of people have been asking about it. So yeah, it's time for me to get back on my grind and hit you guys with another installment of my manga monthly series. And if you notice, this time it's actually anime monthly rather than manga monthly. That's because Legend of the Galactic Heroes is an anime OVA series. It's not actually a manga. But most of the stuff that I'll be talking about in this series is going to be manga, hence manga monthly. And I must say, actually, I just got finished watching this morning, like right before I made this video. I literally just got finished watching this. And my overall assessment, this is one of the best seinen anime or manga series I've ever seen. And I've been thinking about, just after I finished watching it, I've been thinking about where I would rank it. And obviously, for me, I think Berserk is probably going to be number one. It should be number one on everybody's list. And after that, I mean, because I've read what most people would consider to be the best series, best seinen series out there, like Monster by Naoki Urasawa, 20th Century Boys by Naoki Urasawa, Vagabond by Takehiko Inoue, Vinland Saga. Right now I'm forgetting the mangaka's name, but Vinland Saga and Legend of the Galactic Heroes has to rank right up there with those, including Berserk. Including Berserk. That's how good I think this series is. So, I mean, I don't know what kind of list that would be. Right now, I'm thinking Berserk number one, Legend of the Galactic Heroes maybe tied for number one or even second place. But this is definitely one of the best anime series, not even just seinen, but anime series I've ever seen. So, some quick info. So originally, Legend of the Galactic Heroes was a series of sci-fi novels written by Yoshiki Tanaka. And his sci-fi novels were adapted into anime. And it became the Legend of the Galactic Heroes OVA series. And the Legend of the Galactic Heroes has 110 episodes. It's an OVA series. It's the longest OVA series ever. Longest anime OVA series ever. It's 110 episodes. And it also, that's just the main storyline. But it also has, I think, about 48 episodes and maybe 2 or 3 movies worth of side stories, prequels, and all of that good stuff. So it's a pretty long series. I only watched the main storyline, which is the 110 episode main OVA series. And also, one other thing that you need to know, there is no dub of this series. And there's also no official translation of the series. So the only way you can watch it is by downloading it. I mean, if you're American, the only way you can watch it is if you download it and watch it from some fan sub group who decides to translate the OVA series, because that's the only way you're going to watch it. And from my understanding, it doesn't look like it's going to be translated anytime in the near future. So if you hate subs, I don't know what to tell you, because that's the only way you're going to be able to watch this series. Alright, so quick summary. Legend of the Galactic Heroes basically chronicles an intergalactic war between the Galactic Empire on one hand and the Free Planets Alliance on the other hand. And at one point in time, the Galactic Empire was a unified entity. But some people seceded from the Galactic Empire and they then went on to create the Free Planets Alliance. And then after, I think, a couple of 100 years later, the two entities reunited. They didn't reunite, but they made contact with one each other. and a war ensued because the Galactic Empire tried to reabsorb the Free Planets Alliance into its territory, and so a war broke out. And this war, when we get to the main storyline, the war has been going on for about 150 years. So we get right into the action. We get it basically, it's a literary technique known as in medias res, means right in the middle. So we get it right in the middle of the story. And the story is mainly told from the perspective of two opposing military geniuses. That's what these guys are. So on one hand, you have Reinhard von Musel, who becomes Reinhard von Lohengrin from the Galactic Empire, who's one of the greatest military minds of all time. I mean, he's ranked up there with people like, Hannibal and Alexander the Great. So if you know about those historical figures, then you know Reinhardt's in some pretty good company. And on the other hand, we have, oh man, my favorite character from the series has got to be this guy, Yang Winley from the Free Planets Alliance. And actually, he is considered to be, by most people in the series, to be even a greater military genius than Reinhardt was. And he is a tactical genius. I mean, he's undefeated in the series. By the time the series ends, Yang Winley is not defeated. He never, anytime he decides to command a fleet or to go into battle, it's guaranteed that he will not lose. He goes undefeated throughout the entire series. And so the main storyline basically focuses on their respective rise to power. Eventually, Reinhard becomes the emperor of the Galactic Empire, and Yang Winley becomes the equivalent of not even a fleet commander. He basically becomes the commander of the entire army of the Free Planets Alliance. And so we track their respective rises to power, their growing arch rivalry, and also the political and historical events that they're involved in that shapes the world of Legends of the Galactic Heroes. So some of the things you should know about this series. Uh, although the series does deal with war, obviously, by the time we get to the series, a war has been going on for 150 years. The main emphasis is not on the war and it's not on the fights. Although there are certainly military fights, it's not like Shonen Action series. So if you're looking for action like Berserk or Vagabond with some nice animation like from Gundam or something like that, it's not gonna happen. Unfortunately, it's not gonna happen. This OVA series was made like in the late 1980s, so the animation is pretty dated. And the fights, they're not like shown in action fights. They are extremely tactical, extremely strategic, and you can just tell that the person who originally wrote the novel series wanted to go for a very realistic depiction of military engagements. So there will be, they'll reference like military formations, like flanks and all that type of stuff. So it's really technical. So if you're looking for like a shonen action type scenario, you're not going to get it from this series. You're just not going to get it. Second thing you need to know. This story has a huge scope. Then when I say huge, I mean an absolutely huge scope. In terms of time, the backstory for this series stretches all the way from our time to the 36th century. So it spans a significant length of time. About 15 or 1600 years of history is wrapped up in this fight between the Galactic Empire and the Free Planets Alliance. So it's huge. It has a huge scope in terms of the length of time, the history of the events that we're looking at, but also in terms of its range of topics. A huge range of topics. So from politics, and most of the conflict is about different perspectives on what constitutes the right political institution for society. And a lot of that is wrapped up in between democracy versus dictatorship. The Galactic Empire is obviously an autocracy. A dictatorship is actually a monarchy. So there's like an aristocracy, and then underneath, so you have the nobles, and then underneath that, just the common folk. And on the other hand, the Free Planets Alliance is a Republican democracy. And it's also huge, not just in terms of the topics and length of time, but also it's an intergalactic war. So you literally have the Milky Way galaxy split between the Free Planets Alliance and the Galactic Empire. So what we would consider to be like a nation state, like America is a nation and it's just one country on the planet Earth. Imagine if America was a planet. So entire planets are the equivalent of nation states in this series. And it talks also about economics and how people monopolize political power through economic power. It talks about history, the history of political institutions spanning across civilizations, and even the decline of the Earth. In this series, the Galactic Empire and the Free Planets Alliance have stretched out so far across the Milky Way galaxy that the Earth itself has just become a fringe planet, and it's basically a slum by the time we get to the main storyline in this series. And it deals also with sociology, so human nature and the nature of human society. So if you're interested in any of these topics, then you definitely need to watch Legend of the Galactic Hero. So if you're looking for shonen action type stuff, or even like seinen action like that you see in like Berserk, and I'm not saying there's not that kind of action here, but it's not the main focus of the story. So if you're interested in things like economics, politics, political philosophy, history, sociology, if you're interested in that type of stuff, you should definitely watch this series. And the third thing you should know, there is a lot of dialogue in this series. There is a huge emphasis on dialogue, which really, really slows down the story and really, really slows down the pacing of the story. But I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a bad thing, because like I said, the emphasis in this series isn't really on the action anyway. The emphasis on this series is on the characterization and the interaction between the various characters, because there's a huge, just a huge cast of characters. And so the dialogue becomes very, very integral to the storyline, because it's important for characterization, character development, and character interaction. So if you want to watch this series, be prepared for a pretty slow-paced series. And actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure if I've ever seen a story quite this slow. I mean, it really takes some patience to watch this, because everything is just explored in such minute detail that the pacing of the story kind of slows down so that you can get the full impact of the characterization. And in terms of characterization, this is one of the strongest animes I've ever seen, just in terms of characterization. So first of all, the quantity of the characters. There is a huge, and I mean absolutely huge, cast of characters. And this probably, I mean, at minimum, I would say there's at least 50 main characters that we follow. Just at the bare minimum in terms of main characters, because you're talking about the military of the Free Planets Alliance and all of the military figures there, the political institutions of the Free Planets Alliance and all their politicians, and then the same thing for the Galactic Empire. So there's just a huge cast of characters. It's a breathtaking number of characters. And in terms of the varying perspectives that we get to see the story from, You're talking about farmers, politicians, aristocrats, ensigns in the military, so your first grade common soldier, all the way up to your fleet admiral and emperor. You get journalists, activists, and even some terrorists and political revolutionary groups. So there's just a huge cast of characters. And I would say that that's one of the strongest points of this series, because the multiplicity of perspectives really adds depth to the storytelling. I mean, because again, you're talking about a huge range of topics, from economics to sociology to politics to philosophy to history, and you need the characters who are going to be in a position to talk about those things and experience those things from a very common level all the way up to the highest echelons of society. And I really, really love this anime because it's written as a political history. I mean, so imagine if you're watching the political history of a future Earth, or a future timeline of Earth that spans from the present time to 1500 years into the future, and that spans all the way across the entire Milky Way galaxy. So you could just imagine that in order to deal with something like that, you would need a huge host of characters. And not just the quantity, but the quality of the characterization is absolutely top notch. And like I said before, when I talked about the importance of dialogue, it's hugely important for character interaction and character development. It's I mean, we get to see Yang Wenli basically rise from being pretty much your, maybe a little bit higher than your everyday soldier, and we get to see him develop all the way up to being the commander of the entire military of the Free Planets Alliance. And for Reinhardt, we get to see him develop from basically an admiral in the military all the way up to emperor of the Galactic Empire. So the characterization and character development of the Legend of the Galactic Heroes is just is absolutely stunning. Just absolutely stunning. And that's the main reason why I say it's got to be at least in the top 3, if not the number 1 or number 2 spot when I'm ranking the anime, that the best anime I've ever seen. And the emphasis, or what's so interesting about this series, is that the characterization doesn't just extend to the people in the series. It extends to political institutions, to societies, to civilization. So we actually get to see the society of the Free Planets Alliance, for example, described as having a certain political character. And the same thing happens with the Galactic Empire. So there's almost a characterization that happens of the respective societies and civilizations as well. So now let me talk about the 2 most important characters from these series, Yang Wenli, and my favorite character, Yang Wenli, and Reinhardt von Lohengram. So Yang Wenli, and this series is actually pretty unique in the sense that it has 2 protagonists. And Yang Wenli is a co-protagonist, and Reinhardt von Lohengram is a co-protagonist. So they both go hand in hand. So Yang Wenli is one of the main protagonists of the series. And like I said, he's a military general of the Free Planets Alliance. And what's interesting about his situation is that he has an unwavering commitment to Republican democracy, but he finds himself in a position where he's a part of a military of a corrupt democracy, because the Free Planets Alliance is just pretty much corrupt. I mean, it's a democracy in name only by the time that the series starts. I mean, the Secretary of Defense has a terrorist organization. Like, literally, he has a terrorist organization. So Yang is in a very unique situation. So he initially wanted to be a historian but he didn't have the money to pay for the tuition to go to university, so he wound up joining the military so that the military would pay his tuition, and in exchange he had to become a military officer. And while he was in the military, going through his studies before he became a military officer, he was actually studying war history, but the department got closed and he had to switch to strategic studies. And boy, that was somewhat what's the word I'm looking for? Not fortuitous, but it was a bit of foreshadowing because, like I said, he becomes one of the best strategic minds ever in the universe of the Legend of the Galactic Heroes. And after that, that's when after he finishes up his studies, he then becomes a military general for the Free Planets Alliance. And it's because of Yang Wenli's background. This is why I love him as a character so much. It's because of his background of being a historian and a war historian and somewhat of a political scientist that he's able to provide some of the most incredibly insightful commentary of any character in the series. And I mean, he's literally like a political scientist, a political philosopher, and a military general all wrapped in one. And anybody who's watched this series will tell you about Yang Wenli and him having some of the best quotes of the entire series. And I mean, he was just an incredibly prescient and remarkably insightful person. Some of the best dialogue of this series comes from conversations between Yang Wenli and his protege, Julian Mintz, when they discuss political philosophy and they discuss the role of the military with respect to democracy. And it's just, he's just an all-around awesome character. And as the series goes on, as he gains more and more notoriety as a military general, he actually becomes a very, very powerful symbol for democracy throughout the series. Because, like I said, he was a military general, but he also had an unwavering commitment to Republican democracy. And like I said before, he was the best military tactician of the series. He never lost a battle. Then we have his arch rival, Reinhard von Lohengrin, another co-protagonist of the series, and he starts off as a military general of the Galactic Empire, and he's actually in a sort of similar situation to Yang Wenli, but the only difference is that Yang Wenli is he's in the military of a corrupt democracy, but Reinhard von Lohengrin is in the military of a corrupt monarchy, basically, a corrupt dictatorship. And so Reinhard, when he was young, his mother died, and so the only people left were his father and his sister. And his sister was really like his surrogate mother. She watched after him. She took care of him. She was basically the mother figure, the mother that he never had because his mother died. And something really, really tragic happens to Reinhard that basically transforms him and sends him on a path of just absolute conquest, basically. So when he was, I forget how old he was, but I believe he was like 10 or 11 or something like that. And the Emperor of the Galactic Empire, he, took a liking for his sister, and he basically turned Reinhard's sister into one of his concubines. And this had a tremendous impact on Reinhard von Lohengrin. He develops a serious inferiority complex, and he suffers from abandonment issues throughout this series that he never quite gets over, even at the very end of the series. And because of this experience of having his sister taken away from him and basically being used as the Emperor's sexual object, he harbors an extreme hatred for the Golden Bomb dynasty, which is the monarchy of the Galactic Empire. He develops an extreme hatred for aristocrats, and as the series goes on, he becomes the leader of a civil war that overthrows the society of the Galactic Empire, and he becomes the new emperor of the Galactic Empire. And from there, he attempts to conquer all of known space, basically. And you can and his desire, his ambition to conquer all of known space is implied throughout the series multiple times to be symbolic of him trying to fill the emptiness that he felt for never being able to protect his sister from the previous emperor of the Galactic Empire, and to try and assuage his inferiority complex. And so the major conflict of the series between Yang Winley from the Free Planets Alliance and Reinhard von Lohengrin of the Galactic Empire hinges on an ideological conflict between them over the best political institution, the best form of governance for society. And so you have Yang Winley on one hand, who's in favor of Republican democracy, and Reinhard von Lohengrin on the other hand, who's in favor of what might be called the benevolent dictatorship. And that's another thing I like about this series. It's just not a simple equation like democracy good, dictatorship bad, because the Free Planets Alliance is, in terms of their political institution of democracy, it's as corrupt as initially, it's as corrupt as the Galactic Empire. But when Reinhard von Lohengrin takes over the Galactic Empire, he institutes a huge host of reforms. He basically makes the society more free. He grants people civil liberties. He abolishes the aristocracy. He gets rid of the monarchy, and he really makes society as a whole better than what it was under the Golden Bomb dynasty. And so a lot of tension in the fights between Yang Winley and Reinhard von Lohengrin is that Yang Winley constantly has to question his own beliefs. He constantly has to ask the question of whether or not a corrupt democracy is better than essentially a good dictatorship under the guidance of Reinhard von Lohengrin. And as Yang Winley thinks through these political and philosophical problems, he ultimately comes to the conclusion that even a corrupt democracy is better than a good dictatorship. And so that's what the major source of disagreement between Yang Winley and Reinhard von Lohengrin winds up being. So all in all, this is an absolutely great series. Like I said, I would rank it either tied for the first place with Berserk, or number 2 in terms of the best, not even seinen series, but the best anime series. Now, I would say seinen. I haven't really thought about it in terms of best anime series, but definitely in terms of seinen, it would be tied for number 1 with Berserk, or number 2. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.